Welcome. This is the relationship course correction teaching. So if you're headed somewhere else other than that, this is the time to deplane. Talking today about creating healthy relationships and healthy futures, and how to navigate change in relationships with grace. So welcome. I am Dr. Pavini Moray, and I'm the founder of Wilcelium. And we are a trans and queer-led online community teaching you the skills that you need for lasting relationships that stand the test of time. And the first Thursday of every month, we offer a free teaching on relevant topics in the realm of sex and intimacy and relationships. So today we're talking about navigating change in relationships. So just a few housekeeping notes. We'll be together for about an hour. There will be a live Q&A at the end of our time together, so make sure you stay for that. I'll ask you to put your questions into the Q&A box. There's also a chat function, but I won't be reading that. So put them into the Q&A box if you have questions, and you can pop them in there anytime during the training today, and we'll see how many we get through at the end of the time. So this is a participatory teaching. You learn better when you are actively engaged. And so there'll be different moments today during the teaching when I ask you to engage in the chat. And so do it. You don't have to, of course, but do it and join in. It'll deepen your learning experience. If you have other devices out, if you have your cell phone, if you have other browser windows open, you might want to consider just taking this time, turning all those other things off, allowing the distractions of those things to be absent just for the next 60 minutes so that you can really deepen here in your learning. And I want to be clear that we're talking about relationships, and this is applicable to all kinds of relationships, right? I'm not talking about just love relationships or primary partnerships or sexual connections. I'm talking about friendships. I'm talking about relationships with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers, all the different kinds of relationships that you have, because all relationships shift over time. And you can get really good at shifting those relationships, surfing those changes. So to just keep that in mind, that this is applicable to, you do not have to have a partner to be here. This is applicable to all kinds of relationships. So, you know, relationships are supposed to shift. They're supposed to change. They're not supposed to be monolithic, right? They're supposed to breathe and live and grow and shift as you do, as the people in them do that. And what can happen as you are in relationship, no matter with who, you can get into that long-term quality where you know each other, it feels good, you learn your way around each other's triggers, you start to let down your guard, you start to feel safer with each other, and you develop habits in how you relate, relational dynamics that govern much of your interactions. And so even in the best, most woke relationships, there are moments where you go to sleep, I go to sleep, the other person goes to sleep, right? And we just let the relationship coast until there's a wake-up call. And sometimes you might be the one initiating that wake-up call, and sometimes it might be initiated on you. And sometimes you might feel ready for a shift, for a change in relationship. And sometimes you might be worried about, oh, well, it's going pretty good. Why do I want to rock the boat? How is my person, the other person in the relationship with me, how are they going to react if I suddenly want the relationship to feel different, to be different? I want us to practice differently together. Here's the thing, you are not the same person that you were when you started any of your relationships, right? You've had experiences and moments and thoughts and healings that have happened. And so you're not the same person, right? And so the same is true for the other person that's in the relationship with you. They're not the same person either. And And so if you start to hold a relationship as as something that is always shifting, that is always changing to accommodate the new versions of ourselves, right? Because the truth is, I think that we really need slight destabilization to keep things alive, in order to remain healthy, in order to remain in a growing, healing direction, right? In order to not go to sleep. Like, it just means that there's just going to be times when relationships shift. These shifts can be brought about in a number of different ways. And so I'm just going to quickly mention some of the ways. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to ask you to listen and to think about a relationship in your life that is currently either shifting or needs to shift. So just listen to these different ways that they can shift. So relationships can shift through changing roles. This is a big one, right? So you were lovers and now you're becoming friends, more friends. You were partners and now you're becoming co-parents. You were coworkers and one of you got promoted and now you're boss employee. So these roles that you're in relationship, anytime the role shifts, the relationship has to shift. Changing interests is another way that relationships can shift. So we used to go to the gym together and now I want to go dance, right? And so the relationship has to shift to accommodate those changing interests. Changing environments and proximity. So we were in college together and now we're out of college. We used to live on the same block and now we live a 20-minute drive away, or we live really far away, right? We've gone from seeing each other every day to seeing each other once a year. So the changing environment impacts a relationship. Being called from within your own purpose to pursue something new. So maybe it's you feel called to go back to school or to pursue a particular art or craft or skill. Maybe it's a new spiritual path. Maybe you want to study with a new teacher. Any of those calls from within, from our deeper self, are going to shift our relationships, because a person has to accommodate of like, oh, you're now doing this thing and have perhaps less time, right? Changing boundaries. So our boundaries shift and change with time. Like what wasn't okay can become okay, and what was okay can become un-okay, right? And so when those boundaries shift, that's going to impact our relationship. Healing. If you start to do any kind of physical healing or emotional healing, mental wellness healing, whatever you're going to do, that is going to shake up your relationship, right? Because you're becoming different. You're becoming a more healed version of yourself. So maybe in that moment you decide that you've done some healing and you want to have more intimacy with the people in your life. You want to stop being so superficial. And so that's going to shift the relationship. Changes to your internal sexuality can shift your relationships with your sexual partners, and I suppose with others as well, right? Like sometimes you get a deep call of like, I need to be celibate right now. I just need to be having sex with myself, or I need to be having no sex, or I need to be exploring my sexuality outside the confines of this relationship. It has nothing to do with you, sweetheart. I need to explore this thing, right? So that's going to shake things up. Changes in phase of life. So when children are born, when children leave the nest, when parents age, and all of those indicate just a change in life that we have to adjust for, right? So maybe you've been the child and you've been in relationship with your parents, and then they start to age, and then you start to have to take care of them more. And so that relationship has to shift to accommodate that new structure, right? Those new roles. Outside events, like the death of a loved one or a parent or a sibling, right? The death of someone important is going to create change in you or your person, and really going to have to shift the relationship to accommodate that illness. Accidents, like other outside events that can happen that just change you And so then the relationship has to shift. So just, and there's probably more. These are the ones that are kind of top of mind for me. But hearing that list, go ahead and drop into the chat a relationship that you are currently in that is either shifting currently or needs to shift and you know it. So go ahead and put that into the chat. Okay, I'm seeing my relationship with my best friend, changing from platonic friends to romance, moving with a partner across the world. My romantic partner and I are both healing our own childhood past relationship wounds. My long distance crush of 2 months just told me they don't know how to do romance outside of all or nothing and don't have the capacity for all. So they want to be platonic, right? Moving away from my family, coming into 1 year of marriage and learning that commitment. My relationship with my roommates is shifting. I've had to change living situations a lot these months. Partners during pandemic, our marriage, discussing sexual non-monogamy. So lots of change. And of course, you know, the huge change that we're all facing as we start to come out of quarantine, right? That is absolutely going to shift our relationships. And so these transitions, right? Transitions in general are just hard. And it's my personal opinion that we do not pay enough subtle attention to transitions, right? We kind of dismiss our humanity in the moments of transition in our life. We're not super present to them. Because, you know, in relationship, often these shifts just happen, right? Without the acknowledgement. So you're partners with somebody and then you have a child and suddenly you're parents together, right? And there's not often that moment of like, oh, let us acknowledge this shift in our relationship from this to this, right? It just, life is happening too fast. We don't slow down enough to discuss how will we interact now in these new roles, in this newness, how will we be together? Yeah. And so of course, the thing is happening. Rarely we're naming the thing is happening, right? And then, so it's just a prime trigger moment for all of the attachment stuff to come up, right? These are prime moments of, oh shit, in relationship often, because you're going from feeling stable, feeling some degree of ground, feeling in control, familiar, right? Even if it's not great, to not knowing what the new rules are. To not even maybe realizing that there are new rules, or at least new considerations, right? And so it can be super confusing. It can be a really mixed up time until things are sorted, right? We don't have culturally a lot of great structures that model how to transition with grace. So naming what is, and we'll talk more about naming what is, but it really is the primary practice here, that talking about it helps, naming it helps, saying, hey, we're in a transition, things are shifting. Because this shift happens either by design or by circumstance, and there's that loss of solid ground until a new normal is established. And often when change happens, I would say almost always, there is loss. There's a loss of what was, right? And we don't always like to acknowledge that loss of what was. We're like, woohoo, the new thing, yay. And like it behooves us to slow down and acknowledge these moments of loss, right? Giving grief a chance to just be in our bodies, in our field. And it doesn't mean we have to do it forever, right? Like a friend of mine just had a baby, and super, super happy about it, super joyous, right? And their partner wrote me a text and was like, most moments I'm not thinking, why did we do this? But some moments I am, right? It's just like the joy of the new baby, but also the loss of like freedom, right? And being in a different way. So knowing that that loss is part of change, right? And it doesn't have to be a huge deal, but we do have to, we just have to acknowledge it and have that capacity to say, yes, this is grief, and to actually take the time to feel it. So this practice of talking about change, right? The how of it matters, how you talk about it. Because depending on your survival shape, when you talk about it, how you talk about it is going to be really different. When do you feel like you have the energy to bring it up to a friend or a partner or a family member? Hey, have you noticed things are a little bit different between us right now? And people, because of our survival shapes, we just handle this in really different ways, right? So some people need to get to a breaking point, right? Where they just can't take it anymore. They're angry, they're frustrated. And maybe that comes in a moment of arguing or of conflict. And maybe that's what it's taking to either get clarity around needs or the gumption to bring up a hard thing. Maybe, some people just need to get mad. Some people are constantly scanning relationships for things that need to be shifted, so that XYZ doesn't happen again, right? So they're just like, oh, I see something, right? And they're the ones who are going to be like constantly saying, hey, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about this. We need to talk about this, right? Some people feel safer never changing anything at all, and will be super resistant when faced with change. It's going to feel really threatening. We're going to talk about that in a sec. So when change is happening, or when you want change to happen, or when change is inevitably going to happen, I find it really helpful in my relationships to talk about how we're going to talk about it. All right, so best friend, when's the best time for us to talk about changing things in our relationship? When do you feel the most grounded? When do you feel the most connected? When's the worst time for me to bring up something that I want to talk with you about that needs to shift in our relationship? Oh, okay, cool. It's over at your parents' house, right? Or it's at the end of like Monday evening and you've just entered the week. Knowing what you need and what another person in your life needs in terms of space to process this new information, right? So, hey, what kind of space do you need? If I bring up a relationship to you, what kind of space do you need to process that? Can you do it right now, or do you need to do we need to set a date for next week, or do we need to talk about it in a day? Like what are the processing speeds that that your person has, right, and that you have. So I think some helpful points here are to talk about how you want to talk about change. And when someone introduces the change, like say this is you, and say you're going to, like let's say you have a new name and you want your oldest friend to call you by your new name. So I think best practice is going to them, introducing the change. Hey, I have a new name. And time for them to ask questions, time for discussion, right? Without having to make a decision, without them feeling any pressure about it. Like they just get to be in that, like, oh, you have a new name. Whoa, okay, that's big information, right? And then, so just introducing that information without any urgency around, like, things have to change now, right? And again, this is best practice. This is not always how it goes, right? Sometimes things just have to change right now. But introducing that change and then having a spacious time for it to be kind of felt, integrated, discussed, right? And then making a plan for follow-up conversations and check-ins about it, right? So I'm just letting you know I have a new name. I don't expect you to do anything with that right now. We can talk more about it another time. Let's just check in next week and see where you're at with it, and then we can talk about what we're going to do going forward, right? This practice of making decisions about the how you're going to talk about hard, changey things ahead of time, it can reduce some of the stress when those moments of change happen. And sometimes we don't have the luxury of that preparation, but in some of our relationships, we really do. We can talk about how to talk about it. And maybe even create some language around how to cue to the other person that that's what you're doing. So maybe every time you and your sweetheart are going to introduce a new change, maybe you say to each other, I have a new change I'd like to introduce. When do you want to talk about it? Right? Something like that. If we say I have something to talk to you about, that often is super grabby for people. They get triggered by it. I get triggered by it. You probably do. Because it's like, what is it? What is it? Right? So if you create language that is like kind of just, this is an opportunity rather than a crisis, we're just triggering our brains to be more receptive. Yeah. It's ironic that often in our work life, we handle this better, right? Because at work, we have built-in evaluations, we have built-in times to check in, we have processes to bring forth concerns. So I'm not saying that we need to go all policy in our personal relationships, but I think there are some really great HR practices we can adopt here of like, oh, let's have these built-in check-ins. Let's check in every full moon, or let's check in on the 3rd of every month, or let's check in at the beginning of each of the seasons. We can build things into all of our relationships where we're just having check-ins. And I think this is a really great practice. So something it's important to know is that change means destabilization, right? It means a period of uncertainty, means some grief. And so there's a cost of change. Like even if like ultimately shifting this dynamic or shifting this thing is going to really enhance the connection and provide longevity, there's always a cost. We talked about the loss. It's unstable, it's potentially scary. So you're introducing threat, right? If you go to a person and you're like, hey, I have an idea for a relationship. You're basically saying, I don't like how this is. I don't want to continue this way. Or even maybe you're saying, I can't continue in this way, right? And so it does introduce threat, some degree of threat. Our brains perceive that as threat, like, oh no, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? How's it going to be, right? If you are aware that when introducing change, it often lands as threat, it doesn't mean that that's the end of the story, right? It doesn't mean it's going to stay threat. Like if somebody gets grabbed or triggered when you introduce a change, it doesn't mean that is, they're not just going to stay triggered. Like at some point they're going to come back to center and be willing to consider it and think about it and have a more rational discourse about it, right? So to hold right here that someone's first answer is not their final answer, and to just be super generous with that, right? You want that. And so it's just really not, it's not unreasonable to expect that someone won't have feelings about just being plopped in the middle of a relationship, right? They're going to have feelings. You're going to have feelings. Someone may agree that it's for the best, or they might not, right? Either way, it's just a deeply uncomfortable moment or moments or a period of time, right? Where it's like, this isn't working, this has to change. Now we're in a change together. And oh, it sucks. Often it just really sucks. So to just know that it's okay that someone feels discomfort. I mean, it would be awesome if I went to my partner and I was like, hey, I want to change this. And my partner was like, cool, totally. Yeah. Like, that's just not reality, right? Like, I was like, whoa, what, huh? I got to freak out a little bit first. Okay. Okay. Whew. Now I can talk about it. Right. So the gentleness of just knowing that someone's first response is not their final response. Your first response is not your final response, right? Um, there and this holding of the grief piece, right? That even if you are not experiencing the grief, someone else might be. I'm going to give you an example from my life. I was I was dating someone and really enjoying dating them. My partner was not enjoying it and was having a lot of grief about the change to our relationship. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is great. I'm having such a good time. And I was dismissive of my partner's grief, right? I was like, I don't feel that. Um, and the learning here is that even if you're excited about what's coming, even if that feels really good to you, it's important to make space, right, for the loss. And it's important to acknowledge anybody's feelings about the change, right? So even if you're like, woohoo, now we're going to be in this kind of relationship, and we were lovers, now we're going to be friends. I'm super excited that we're like dumping all that lover baggage and we're just in the friends thing. It doesn't mean that there's not grief that has to happen. Yeah. And so to just make space for that. When I want to talk about when you receive these invitations, shall we say, to change that you have not initiated, right? So if someone in your life initiates a change, says, hey, this has to be different for us to continue, or hey, I'm moving to Argentina, or whatever. I want you to call to mind, so this is an interactive moment, and it's a judgment-free moment. What I want to do is invite in some compassion for this experience of being reactive when we're unwittingly thrown into a change. Drop into the chat a time where you feel like, oh, that wasn't my best moment. I didn't respond the way I wish I would have, or I had a lot of big feelings and wasn't super graceful. Or when was a time that you were in this relationship and we're just kind of like flailing about? And just go ahead and put that in the chat. Leaving, breaking commitment agreements, not taking care of myself, blaming my partner, introducing the possibility of new partners to a non-monogamous relationship. My partner is starting a new business. Each stage has been really stressful for me, so I panic or try to be too involved. Just been really scared during the pandemic. The thought of inviting more people into our world is really scary, but my partner is really excited about it. I'm not handling it very well. I kissed my friend casually and found out it wasn't casually for them, and I felt guilty and I didn't want to be responsible. My partner and I talked about being poly. When someone showed interest in my partner, I did not react well. My partner broke the relationship agreement seriously. I felt betrayed. Opening our relationship. Yeah, so I just want to invite here just this moment of compassion for all of us. Like, we do this imperfectly. I do it imperfectly, right? You do it imperfectly. The change is deeply uncomfortable often, right? And to just hold ourselves with grace of like, yeah, I fucked up, I messed up, I was less than graceful or less than skillful. I wasn't the person that I wanted to be in that moment. And to just realize that that's never, like it never has to be the period at the end of the sentence, right? Like you always get to go back and be graceful in a different way, right? And so I'm going to take the example of the person who kissed their friend and it was casual for you and it wasn't casual for your friend. Like you get to go back and do that in a way that um, you can't do what you can't remove the impact that happens, right? But now you can have more language around talking about it, right? And you can just talk to them about like, whoa, that happens, and I want to hear about the impact for you, and I want this to be a moment for us, you know, to grow together and to deepen together, and what do you need? And like you get to like even if you're not graceful in the moment, you can always choose to be graceful. Yeah. Um, because it's just, you know, we're human, and if someone brings something to us, chances are they've been thinking about it for a while. You know, we haven't, and or we might not have been, and so it's just super normal to feel feelings of dismissiveness, defensiveness, rejection. It's super normal to be blamey, right? Um, when I was a Montessori teacher for a long time, and I had to have conversations with parents about their kids. And I had a student who was so lovely, and but also really rambunctious and struggling in our class. And so I had to have this conversation with her parents, and I had to tell them it was super hard to bring this information. And their immediate response was, "Why didn't you tell us this sooner?" Right? And I have a lot of compassion for that response, right? Because this I wish I had known. Why didn't you tell me sooner? These are it's blamey, but it's also just the full on impact of receiving new information, right? And having to like be thrown by that, feel what's happening in the moment, and then somehow still be in conversation, right? And so when you bring something to a friend or a partner or a coworker, a shift, a family member that you want to make, or if they bring it to you, it's just, I really want to normalize that there's going to be this reaction, right? And these these responses are completely normal. And the truth is that the thing has already happened. Like the change, it's not really a well, maybe this should change. It's already happened. By the time someone is bringing it to you, it has already happened in their heart. By the time you're bringing it to someone, it's already happened in your heart, right? And so now the job becomes for whoever is the recipient of the change, right, to do the grief work, to come to a deeper response than the initial reaction, and to assess and discern, like, where are you? Like, if your best friend comes to you and it's like, guess what, I'm moving across the country, right? You're gonna have lots of responses. And where are you in regards to that change, right? It just needs to be um, so much spaciousness around talking about feelings there, right? So when I say graceful, I don't mean that it's just like everybody here, because you came to this webinar, is like now going to be a boss at like being awesome when somebody brings you a hard change info. No, but it's a practice that you get to be in, and nothing is ever final. You get to keep reinventing. You get to keep iterating on that grace. Yeah. Um, because part of being an adult in relationship means that sometimes things are going to change without your consent, and you're going to hate that. You're going to be mad. You know, feelings change, people change, you know this. And so I think the thing that I ultimately hold in my heart is that we're each called to our own path, right? And I might develop new interests. I might develop new relationships. I might swap roles, right? But strong relationships can hold me in all of that. And I can hold whoever is in the relationship with me in all of that, right? I can hold my partner as they shift and change and grow, right? We just have to be able to talk about it. Because if we can't hold each other in the shifts and change, right, the relationship just typically doesn't work out. I am, when I was initially first married to my first partner, there came this point in our relationship where I really wanted my own room. I wanted my own space, and I brought that to them, and I told them that, and they freaked out, right? And it completely shut down the conversation. I was like, nope, can't afford that. Nope, we're not going to do that. And you know, ultimately that relationship fell apart because like it couldn't hold. Um, it couldn't hold it. It couldn't hold me. You know, I was growing and changing, and it couldn't hold their needs to like not have that happen. And so that relationship ended, right? And so I think that the moral of the story is the more awesome you can be when somebody requests the change, even if it's not initially awesome, the more empowered you will feel when someone else instigates a relationship shift with you, right? Um, so yeah, I want to just pause there for a sec. Okay. Part of relation shifting with grace is the capacity you have to get current with who that other person is right now in their life, right? Um, and so, you know, we fall into habits. Real life often moves way too fast. And so we fall into these dynamics and these habits in relationship, and we can stop seeing someone as they are right now. We might be seeing them as they were 5 years ago, or knowing them as they were 5 years ago. We haven't updated, we haven't gotten current. And I think this is a really beautiful part of relation shifting is getting current with who this person is now. So I want you to just, we're going to do a very brief drop in thing. I'm going to guide you in it. So just call to mind someone that you're close with, that you've been close with for at least a few years, maybe a really long time. Just call them to mind. And this can be anybody. It can be a family member, a friend, a partner, whatever. What is something new you notice about them? Like, what is, how are they new? Maybe they've reacted to something in a new way recently and you were surprised. I'm just opening to this question of how is this person different now than when we met? And you don't have to have words for it. It could just be like senses or how you feel when you consider them. So if you just kind of pull your vision, it's almost like, you know, we're like this, looking at straight ahead all the time. Widen your vision when you hold this person in your mind's eye. Just widen your vision. Get wide in how you're able to perceive them. How do you know them in their life at this moment? And um, how can you find gratitude for this newness in them? What are you grateful for? And then again, just drop that gratitude in the chat. I'm grateful to my brother that he listened to me when we spoke last week. You can tell them when next time you are in contact with them, but just inviting you into a process here of like letting community see your gratitude for the newness in somebody important in your life. So put it in the chat. How are you grateful? Okay, I'm going to read some of these. I'm grateful to my partner. I'm grateful to my partner for sharing himself with me, even when it meant sharing his anxiety and fear. Grateful for all the hard work my partner is going to communicate. Feeling grateful that my best friend is considering that I might be needing space from us right now. Oh, this is a continuation. Grateful for the partner of all the work that they're doing to improve their communication. My friend of 10 years has become more independent since we had to separate. They've found new relationships. A partner's evolving tenderness and openness and communication of their truth, even if it's hard. I'm grateful that my partner understands and values my need for space. Great. So yeah, the way we can see these people in our lives that we love in a new way, right? It just opens the relationship shift to just be really, I don't know, concrete, real time, pragmatic, right? Oh, there you are right now. Here I am right now. Cool. What do we need to do here to make this thing feel awesome? To make it feel like um, it's the right space for both of us right now, right? Beautiful. the the last thing I want to name, and then we'll have some Q&A, is how to talk about this. And I've been giving you little pieces here and there. Obviously, you've talked to them about the how, right? You're not doing it when you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, right? You want to keep the conversation focused on your own experience, right? Rather than the blame. Hey, I'd like to talk to you about something that's up for me in our relationship. I've started to notice that I feel differently about sleeping with someone. I'm noticing I have a desire to sleep in my own bed by myself with just me and my body. And I know we've been sleeping together for years. That really is probably going to impact you. And so I just want to make some space for that. And we can talk about it now if you want, or you could take the time you need and we could come back to it, whenever we decide. Not insisting that they have an answer, right? A helpful thing here is understanding checks. Can you, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, what is it? What do you think I'm saying to you? Because like so much of the information that we receive comes in through our filters, right? Rejection, abandonment, whatever. And so, me needing space might have nothing to do with the person I've been sleeping with, right? It might be just like super internal. It might have something to do with a relationship, but in any case, asking for understanding checks to make sure that the person understands what you're really saying. What are they really hearing? and then making a plan for a conversation to follow up, right? Having these built-in times. We're like, okay, cool. I just wanted to share that information with you. Thank you so much for receiving it. How does next Wednesday afternoon meeting on Wednesday afternoon work for you? Can we talk about it more then? And I really want to answer your questions and hear any concerns you're having. You want to draw out dissent, right? A lot of times we're like, I don't want to hear your negative answers to my desires, but actually you do. You want to draw out any dissent, any concerns, so that you can address them, so you can talk about them. Like, okay, so tell me, so maybe this is like fast forward a week and I'm now sitting down with my partner to talk about the sleeping alone thing. And I'm like, so yeah, tell me how that landed for you. What are your concerns? What are your questions? Right? Because these changes are going to take time, right? And the more spacious you can be with your partners or your person's feelings, reactions, like the more awesome that's going to go. The practice again is just keep naming what is. As relationships shift, wow, you moved across the country and I just noticed how much I'm missing you, right? And how is it for you, right? You just keep naming what is as things shift, as things change, as they settle again. You keep noticing your experience. You keep naming your experience. You keep asking questions about the other person's experience. You normalize the discomfort. Like, yeah, this feels like shit. And you just remember that you're on your path as a person. And this is part of what needs to happen for the sake of your own life and your own learning, right? So just lastly, relationships that thrive really get good at navigating transition and change, right? Ones that can't do that end. And so the more practice you can get with this, right? It's all about the practice of like, okay, how do I keep naming what is? How do I keep showing up and talking about the change, acknowledging the change, feeling the grief? Because it's really a practice of resiliency and creating relationships that that you want to be in. I think it's really worth it. So I'm going to stop there. Just say thanks. We're going to have some Q&A here in a second. Yay, relationships. Good. So I have a couple of announcements. We do a free first Thursday teaching every month. And the next one is going to be really fun. It's called Sparring, Not Scarring, Rules for Fighting Well. And it's all about how to create the rules of engagement for your conflicts. And you're on the mailing list, so you'll get plenty of opportunities to sign up for that. And then the other thing that's interesting and fun that's coming up is a half-day erotic pleasure magic retreat called Bless My Heart. And I don't know about you, but like figuring out how to re-engage with my body, how to socialize, how to be with the bodies of others, how to even think about dating, how to go to events. It's feeling like a lot to me. And, we're emerging from winter, but we're also emerging from this year and a half of social isolation. And so I think that it's important to deliberately take time to prepare your body to be in a different world. And so this summer we'll be offering monthly half-day retreats that are just an intentional time to really ground in with your own body, your own heart, your own sex, your own magic in community. So we'll be doing ritual and sending you things so that you can make nourishing beverages and treats, because beverages are awesome. We'll be doing some somatic work, some pleasure practices, and I will be there to lovingly support you in tending your relationship with yourself and holding that container. So the first retreat, Bless My Heart, is going to be Saturday, June 12th. And hold on, I'm going to put the link into the chat for you so you can have it. And this will also come out in an email Okay, so there's 2 links there. The first one is to the live retreat on June 12th. This is if you are available and want to join in and be in community. There's a discount if you sign up. Since you came to this webinar, the full price is $127, but because you were here, I'm going to offer it to you at $97 for the next 48 hours. And the link is there. And then if you can't join us in person, or if you just prefer to do it on your own, there's a self-paced retreat option. You'll get all the same materials and recordings and playlists and all the abundance of arrows that I can curate, and you'll get all that, and then you'll just set a time and do it by yourself. You won't do it, you'll do it like asynchronously. So anyway, that all ends Saturday at midnight. So, and just a reminder that it is Mother's Day, also known as Gender Blessed Parents Day, this guy, on Sunday. And so if you have anybody in your life who you think could really use this, you can also give it as a gift. So I hope that you join for those things. Yeah, and so we're going to take some questions now. So go ahead and put it into the Q&A button. And I'm going to take some, get the full attention here. All right, how does one have these conversations with someone when you're all the time living and working in one room together, right? Yeah, I think it's imperative to have these conversations, right? Because in that, it's like that cauldron almost, you're just cooking in that cauldron of like, we are always together, and like things that are not aligned for you anymore are probably glaringly obvious at this point, right? And probably for your partner too. And so I wonder about setting a date to talk about like, hey, can we make some time together to talk about what's awesome in our relationship and what we want to shift for this next quarter or this next month, right? And just really having a very deliberate start time and end time, so it just doesn't blur into all of the everything of daily life, right? Hey, can we sit down from 1 to 2 p.m.? I don't know if that container aspect works for you. For me, it works. So I hope that's helpful. When receiving a change, how do you deal with a changing person who's unclear on what they need and how to communicate that change clearly? Okay, so this is such a great question. Thank you. And this is such a true thing, right? That when we're in the process of a change, we may not be able to accurately assess what we need, and we might not be able to accurately communicate what we need, right? And so can that be part of what is? Can that be part of what gets acknowledged? Like, hey, person, beautiful, sweetheart, I know that you're in the midst of a big change, and I want to be an ally in that change. And I know that it's right now really hard for you to even put it into words, what that change is or what you need. And I just want you to know that I'm here and I've got you. And when those words come, that's awesome, you know? And then also, so that's like the person facing thing. And then also you get support. You like talk to your therapist or your best friend and you're like, oh my God, their process is woo all over the place. And I'm like, I'm freaking out, right? You get support too for yourself, because it's hard to be when somebody's in a really big state of transition. This happens all the time with gender transition, right? If one person goes through a gender transition and the partner is just like, I really want to support them and I am having all these feelings and it's impacting me in all of these ways, right? And so you just make a delineation of like where you process what. So I hope that's helpful. If I haven't responded to someone's change gracefully, how can I come back to them? I love this. I think you just do. You just go back and you say, hey, you know, you were bringing a change and I was a resisty asshole, or I threw a temper tantrum, or I was really scared, or and I want to just like, can we just have a follow-up? Because I want a chance to do it better with you, because I really do support you. And, you know, my stuff just got in the way of me being able to be supportive. I'm sorry, you know, you can hear the impact of that. And just know that like, that was my first response. this is where I'm really coming from a really grounded place, right? Yeah, okay. So my sex drive, this is I think the last question. My sex drive has dried up since my partner and I started having conflict, working on our own deep healing. I'm afraid it won't come back in the same way. Yeah. It might not. You know, it might not. It might come back in a different way. How can you bring language to that without the like the smothering impact of shame, right? Of like feeling guilty or bad about it, because it's just what is. And libido comes and goes through the course of our life, right? It's never, our sexuality is just never one thing from like the moment we have it until the moment we die. It's like, you know, it's going to be shifting and changing. And so I think when you're in a relationship, a sexual relationship, and these kinds of changes happen, like they happen for all kinds of reasons, right? It could be conflict, it could be trauma healing, it could be like a health situation, it could be just like a need for personal space around your body and personal sovereignty, you know, and so just continuing to be inviting in your partner into that discussion, right? And refusing to be complicit and shaming yourself for it. It's just what is. And trusting, I think for you, that's the part for your partner, how to deal with that. For you, I think trusting that Eros, just like other energies, comes and goes in our lives, and we can do things to invite it in. You know, we can make space for it, we can make time for it, and sometimes it's okay if it's quiet. It doesn't. We don't have to be fully sexual all the time. So I hope that's helpful for you. So I think we're at the end of our time together. I'm just really grateful to be with humans who are growing and changing. Our, you know, as I said, we do these teachings every month. They're free for you to attend. They're not free for us to produce. And as a small queer trans-led company, like what you say about us matters so much to us. Our relationship with you matters a lot. And so if this has been helpful at all, would you do me a favor and just tell your people, send them our way, and send them like materials that are awesome. You'll get the recording of this, but just it really matters to us if you would help us spread the word. I'd be so grateful, because I want us to be really successful. So grateful for your time today, and look forward to more soon. I'm Dr. Pavini Moray for Wellcelia, and I wish you breath and pleasure. Bye, everybody.